Speaking of different activities, we've been talking about different books we've been reading.
Yes.
Um, what's something you've been reading? Tell me about it. What's it been like for you? Why'd you pick it up? What are you learning?
Yeah, last night I read U Squared by Price Pritchett. It's basically challenging the notion of incremental improvement and getting that quantum leap. So many nuggets there. It's not even like 50 pages. It was like 45 pages or something. And somebody has recommended to me that book for like, she recommended like 3-4 times, and eventually I was like, okay, I'm gonna read it now. So yesterday I got it, read it, and I was like, damn, because he showed me many limitations that I was holding on to, which could be, okay, I want to make content, I want to do coaching, let's see where we can go with this. But in terms of certain metrics, I don't have to look at them. They could go make quantum leaps, exponential growth, as opposed to going incrementally with that metric. I can focus on other activities. Basically, there's a story that sums it up very well that he had in the book, which is, so there's a window, and then a fly is just going and hitting the window. We've all seen this, right? We've all seen this. You see a fly constantly hitting a window, and you're like, dude, please don't do this. And you know that fly is going to keep hitting the window until it falls to the windowsill and dies.
I even saw that with birds a few weeks ago. There were multiple birds just attacking the window without any success. They didn't fall over and die, but you had to wonder, why do you keep doing that? Do you
But
want
this is for
to
the
change?
insect that's in the room and it's trying to leave, but there's a door
Mm,
10 feet away.
mm,
So what he was saying is he was looking at this and there was a door 10 feet away. And he said if the insect just took a step back, not a step back, but whatever, and went around, it would have, with much less effort, would have produced the result that it wanted.
Hmm.
I mean, that's one way. Essentially, it's like, I'm here. I want to go here. And there's a bunch of obstacles in the way. So to go from here to here, I can try harder and harder and harder and hit more walls. Maybe I'll make it, maybe I won't. But I might like lose myself in the process of working harder and harder. This is where we talk about this hustling, right? What's the point of hustling if you're not going to get anywhere? What's the point of hustling if you're on this hedonic treadmill? You're hustling just for the sake of hustling? Is it because you love it, or because you feel that if you don't do it, you're not enough? Why are you doing it, right? So you can keep hustling, trying to get there, or you can take a step back and notice, okay, I'm here. This is the situation that we want to create from current status quo to desired status. Like, what's that distance? How to cover that distance? And because one thing is like, if you keep, this is something we've spoken about before, which is what got you here is not going to get you there.
Mm-hmm.
So what got you up until this point, if you just try to do more of that, it doesn't mean it's going to get you where you want to go. So you need to reassess and look at going from here to where we want to go. What do we need to do? What are the sets of activities? Who can we learn from? So essentially, it's like putting aside everything that you think you know, putting aside those habits and stuff, and saying, okay, and this really comes back to the meditative practices. You're creating a distance from everything that you gathered. Essentially, are you running it, or is it running you? So I think, not like the way I understood it, not even understood it, but from my perspective, if I do want to make quantum leaps happen consistently, not just incremental improvements, but these quantum leaps coming from the notion of quantum computing, if you want that exponential growth or change, then I need to have a distance from that, as opposed to being run by what I've gathered. This is just like one of the few things I can share from this short read, but I think this is a very powerful text. It probably didn't even take 2 hours to read.
Does it have its own techniques and tools, or are you kind of connecting it with the practices you're already employing to create a distance?
Yeah, I am connecting it with that because it works, but it does have its own techniques and tools. He's essentially, in the book, it shows you the perspective of how to approach things so that you can achieve a quantum leap. The reason I'm connecting it with the tools is because it lubricates the process.
Makes sense.
So what have you been up to? You've been reading this book you were telling me about.
A
The
few different
seven,
books. The Four
few,
Agreements
the four
is
agreements.
one.
So,
Yeah. I've been looking at a few books in the last few months. Some of my volunteering activity here at the Isha Institute was supporting the launch of the Karma book. Sadhguru recently authored that, A Yogi's Guide to Crafting Your Destiny. And it just made me I had curiosity. What other groundbreaking books are there that have been shared over the last few decades that people consider their guides for crafting their destiny or finding their joy and fulfillment? And one that kept coming up was the Four Agreements, and it's also called A Practical Guide to Personal Freedom. It's like, okay, this is a guide. Sadhguru is just releasing a guide. I wonder what the author Don Miguel Ruiz has to share. And it's a code of conduct that is derived from ancient Toltec wisdom. And when I was learning about it, I found out it was released in 1997. And since then, it's sold over 9 million copies in the US. So got my hands on it, just wanted to see what are these four agreements and how are they relevant to me? Are these agreements I've already made with myself, or do I need to break certain agreements I've made? What is this whole concept? And I'm nearly finished with the book. Um, I really like the way it's structured. Very clear language, short read, less than 200 pages, and he just talks, from my point of view, about all of the social programming that we have picked up from the time that we are born until now, and all the unconscious agreements we make with ourselves, with others, with our parents, with different institutions, and how many of these this conditioning, this programming, these agreements, however you want to describe it, whatever terminology resonates, most of them are not actually serving us. They're keeping us from exploring our authentic selves. They're keeping us from um, living a free life, because some of the agreements we make are actually bondages. They're ruled by fear, by guilt, by obligation. So very straightforward. The first agreement is be impeccable with your word. He talks about how important your speech is, and how we are empowered with speech, with language, with the ability to express ourselves and persuade each other. He says you can either use that to spread love and truth, or you can use that to poison yourself and others. And of course, he talks about speaking with integrity, say only what you mean. And I've seen this, even from yogic masters talking about the power of speech. And I remember in reading, what is it, Autobiography of a Yogi. There's quite a number of mentions about how important your word is. So resonated completely. And I just noticed in the last few weeks of thinking about this that I am more conscious of what comes out of my mouth, and whether I'm speaking in a silly way, in a casual way, or if I'm just more aware of how am I using my speech and how is it affecting others, and in turn how is that coming back and affecting me. uh, the three remaining ones is do not take anything personally, do not make assumptions, always do your best. So his point of view, Don Miguel Ruiz, he's saying when you make these four agreements with yourself, when you practice these things, being impeccable with your word, not taking things personally, not making assumptions, doing your best in any situation, you can transcend this world of illusion, of programming, of unconscious suffering, and move into a world where you are in control of where your life is going and where your relationships are going, and finding fulfillment in what you do. So the other three also resonate. I mean, I think it'd be hard to uh, poke holes in these agreements. Of course, everyone's going to interpret them differently, and whether you practice it or not varies. But um, yeah, you want me to talk about any of these other things, or you want to jump into, you
yeah,
know,
it's just really interesting because I'm connecting the lessons from this U squared book and the one that you're talking about right now.
yeah,
The first thing, it's about the agreements that we might have made in the past with other people as
yep,
obligations that are holding us back in some way, emotionally and stuff. So what I noticed also, if you do want to make a quantum leap, you're not only making a distance from habits and stuff, but emotional bondage, like whatever we've accumulated is keeping us from doing what we want to do. Not everything, but let's say you want to go from here to here, You can choose to run, you can choose to employ the use of a different vehicle so you can get there quicker.
Mhm.
But if you feel like you have something to prove, that you can run there, it might not be an effective way of getting there, considering the situation, considering the circumstance, but still you may choose to do it because you feel that it's wrong for some reason. It's kind of a self-righteousness. So there is this thing that we need to clear the space. So I feel, there's this kind of a connection that I'm noticing that in these texts. I just wanted to
It's a
bring
great
that
one.
up.
It's a great one. Every situation you're in, seeing that the tools, methods, and path that you employ could be radically different than the last time you did it. Allowing yourself that freedom and that freshness of decision making, and not being burdened by past thought processes that may not serve you anymore. I thought don't make any assumptions is also so important.
Mhm.
I notice, the main challenge I have is oftentimes interpersonal, where I don't feel a sense of reciprocation, or I don't feel like there's the right level of consideration that I'm giving someone that I'm receiving, or even just the decency of responding to someone in a timely way. These simple interpersonal things, I notice oftentimes are the things that cause me the most frustration or distress. And assumptions are a huge part of that. Why isn't this person getting back to me? Why isn't this person acting in a more considerate way? And the story I will tell myself about this person, or whatever the relationship is, they're almost always hyper dramatized, completely fabricated. And then when I actually next interact with the person, they immediately vanish. All those assumptions, I was like, oh, that was stupid. But there's a cycle. It keeps happening. There's still a tendency to become offended easily, to create assumptions, to judge the person, and then wait to see if it's true or not. Um, I think it's really empowering to take a step back and see, what assumptions do I make on a daily basis about people I know, people I'm meeting, and are they really serving me or not? And one of the takeaways that the author makes is, stop making assumptions, start asking great questions, and lean into the questions, even if it seems excessive, so that you actually understand truth, so that you're actually in connection with the people around you, as opposed to, frankly, severing your ties to them through the kind of endless nonsensical judgments that the mind creates. I think it really distances you from other people when you make assumptions about them and judgments about them, when expectations don't meet reality. So I felt really, there was a lot of clarity that came from just realizing, rather than judging, rather than assuming, simply ask and clarify, and be vulnerable enough with whoever you're interacting with to understand where they're coming from. Oftentimes it's not as bad as you would assume.
Yeah, I can really relate to this interpersonal thing. Um, in a few occasions, there'll be people who are close to us or people whom we trust. It doesn't have to be only because we trust that individual in general, we have a close relationship. It could also be that we trust them for something particularly important to us. And so when they don't reciprocate the way that we would like them to, I find myself, I don't know if it's a pessimism or some sort of a negativity, that pattern that you're referring to, that same thing happens. It's like these
Yeah,
negative assumptions, right? It's like
yeah,
assumption where I'm assuming negatively. And when I look at the core of it, why would I assume that? Because I might feel like I'm not enough. But why would I feel like I am not enough? As a piece of life, there's no need to feel that. But if I identify myself as this individual, if I identify myself with something that I've gathered, and in that situation I'm this, then I might feel like this isn't good enough, which means I am not good enough because I
right.
feel or I think that I am this. I have misidentified myself as that. And I think it looks to me like the author saying to ask great questions so that and ask and seek for the truth in the situation in that person is very powerful. What are some of the does he give some sort of framework or some toolkit or mindset to be able to ask these questions? Because if we can do this, it sounds like we're both at that same juncture where we're like, I don't want to go this way, but I keep getting pulled in that direction, and I go into this cycle, and I come back eventually. So we're going, and we pull ourselves back. We're going and pull ourselves back, but we want to reduce this going and pulling ourselves back so that eventually we
Yes.
just stay there.
Yep.
To stay there, that level of awareness.
So two things. One, I think it's really vital what you did. It's connecting it back to yourself. Why am I making an assumption about this person? Why am I thinking the worst about them? It's actually saying something about you. And this is the point that he makes, is that what other people say and do is a projection of their reality, their dream, their manufactured illusion. And your action, your assumption about that person is a projection of your reality. As you said, it might be insecurity, it might be past pain and trauma, it might be unmet expectations. But as soon as you become aware that you're creating this fog, you're creating this illusion, you're creating these assumptions which are not grounded in anything other than, recycled past or, you know, uh, things that you're making up right now, then you can perhaps stop or slow down that process. And then in terms of what questions can do that, I don't remember there being a specific template but he shared, but I started thinking to myself, okay, how would I get to the bottom of this with someone rather than making assumptions? And I think, in the situation, you'll probably be creative and come up with the right questions, but leading with, um, can you clarify? Or, hey, I don't understand. Or do you mind explaining? Or it seems like blah, blah, blah. Sharing with them that this is just your perception. It seems to me like you don't want to talk right now, or it seems to me like you're really busy and not able to get back to me. Is that what's going on? As opposed to not even saying something to that person, but harboring resentment. This person doesn't care for me. This person, has something against me, and just assuming, that they must not care about me. So even just knowing, one, you are creating these assumptions and they are almost always inaccurate and toxic to you and to the relationship. And two, with that awareness, let me slow down and stop that process and instead care enough about myself, my relationship, and that person to just ask, to clarify, to seek an understanding of where they're coming from.
It's not even about slowing down and stopping the process. It's about cultivating that awareness so that you notice when it happens. And by that awareness, it will automatically dissolve.
Reset.
Actually, so when you said it comes from an emotionally charged place, what I realize is bring into the conversation, where are you coming from? Within yourself, where are you coming from? Like, are you actually coming from that place of sense of expansiveness? Or are you coming from a place of insecurity?
Mm-hmm.
Where are you coming from? So these assumptive questions or these clarifying questions are on the surface. If you go on the deeper level, where are you coming from? If you are feeling insecure, then those assumptive questions may feel more natural, or they may just naturally come out because you're trying to feel secure and you're just assuming like something it's against you. I don't know. But
Mm-hmm.
if you feel expansive, you feel like, I'm just a piece of life. Whatever it is,
when,
whichever way it is, I'm okay with it. If you
when you're
truly
saying
are
this,
coming from there, then you'll ask for the clarification naturally because you won't, because whichever way it is, you'll deal with it appropriately because you are not identified with something that's not you, something that you've got. This is
mm-hmm.
how and this is not a constancy for me. At times I'm like that. At times I'm not like that.
Yeah.
So this is me reflecting, looking back at my reactions or my responses to situations.
Thinking about curiosity and compassion. When you value your life, when you value the life around you, when you want the best for yourself and best for the people you're interacting with, that's a certain sense of compassion that you're cultivating within and without. And then adding curiosity to that, wanting to truly know what is the nature of this thought process, where is this person coming from, how are they truly doing right now. When you have these two ingredients of valuing yourself and the other, and wanting to genuinely understand, it allows you to kind of, yeah, be more aware, be more intentional, be more able to check in, as opposed to being so reactive and feeling slighted, feeling offended, feeling misunderstood. You need not be as emotionally charged or reactive when you have a sense of genuine curiosity. Okay, we're not in sync right now. Let's talk it out, as opposed to me hanging up or judging or ghosting or whatever the very common practices are these days.
I want to work on things right now and fix it. I'm not going to wait around. And that's when I realized, like, and as I was going through that compassion, which you mentioned, it's like, where am I coming from? Where are they coming from? And what am I misidentifying with that's leading me to falsify my perspective, to make that assumption, it's like, it's that blame, right? Right now we're moving from blame to responsibility.